What's up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you are watching on a fast-growing YouTube channel, that's Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turney, and joining me, as he always does, for another episode of the UNC Basketball Show, it's our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And, AJ, we got another fun show ahead as we're going to be kind of looking back to start this podcast on Carolina's two victories over Ohio State and Michigan over the last week or so, recording this one on Thursday evening. So the win over Michigan fresh on a lot of Carolina fans' minds right now. So we're going to dive into those games, kind of what we've learned from those. And we're also going to look ahead to the Tar Heels matchup in the ACC with Pittsburgh, which tips off on December 30th at noon, which I think is going to be an interesting matchup too, especially being in Pittsburgh because they're actually having a pretty decent season as of right now. So I think it's going to be a tougher matchup than some people think. But AJ, we'll start with looking back a little bit, looking back at the wins over 23rd ranked Ohio State, 89-84 overtime win. And then obviously the win over Michigan on Wednesday night in the Jumpman Invitational, 80-76, because I think we've seen Carolina play its best basketball over the season. In doing so, we've also picked up two of their best wins of the season against two of the better opponents that they've played. And I think both of these teams kind of possessed and poised their own different challenges that Carolina answered really well in different ways, which we'll dive into here. But obviously, fresh off the Michigan game, we're going to look a little bit back to Ohio State, which we got to probably rekindle the brain a little bit to remember what happened exactly in that one. But what are your thoughts and what have you kind of learned over the last two games? Because like I said, I think we've seen Carolina, I'm not going to necessarily say turn a corner maybe, but we've seen some improved performance and it's led to some really nice wins.
Well, I like to connect the two games. And really, I like to connect the last four because to me, it goes back to when Hubert, during the at the end of the 4-game losing streak, he said, look, we hadn't had time to practice. And they really didn't because they went out to Portland. They had 3 games in 4 days. They didn't really have a hardcore practice on that Saturday. They have to have a mandatory day off during the week. They went to Indiana. That they didn't practice that Monday. They had Tuesday, which was a light sort of get prepared for IU, and they get blown out. They finally go back home, and they got to end up back in Blacksburg for that game. So They really didn't have a chance to sort of, sit back, take a healthy view of things, and start making what Hubert calls tweaks and pivots. So they got a chance to do that afterward. And I know that he took a little bit of heat from people saying he was making excuses and stuff, but I think, for lack of I hate to use trite terms, but these cliches, but the proof is in the pudding, Jacob. Mm-hmm. They have changed since they got back. They played a lot better. The emphasis on going through the post and making Armando an option every time down the court is absolutely played out. They've won 4 in a row. 2 of the games he's attempted the most shots. In the 2 that he didn't, he was 1 shot off tying somebody for the most shot attempts. So they're doing what Hubert is asking and demanding in that respect. They have added the pressure, the trapping element. That was really born in Blacksburg. It got them back in that game. And I thought they used it really well in spurts against Ohio State and Michigan, throwing them off. They forced them to rush shots. They started taking shots that were out of their comfort zone. So they got a lot out of the trap. I also like the way he's used his bench when he has played guys. I love the fact that he went with Puff for 14 minutes in the first half against Michigan. Nance picked up a second foul, but they needed some balance. They needed Puff's springiness and his ability to be a part of those traps. I think he's a better guy to trap with than Nance just because he could get to those quicker. You don't want a guy who's a split second late to a trap because then the guy with the ball can break the trap, and suddenly 2 players are defensively way out of position. So Puff's pretty good at that. So I like all those things. I like how they've crashed the boards better. They've been better on the glass. I like how they have been better offensively as far as sharing the ball. Their assist numbers it was terrible. It was like in the 38% range through the first 9 games. It's at 60% in the last 4. They have 72 assists on 120 baskets. Caleb Love, not taking as many bad shots. He's scoring in volume even when he's not hitting a bunch of threes. And then the last 2 games, Armando has been dominant against 2 completely different types of really good front lines. and he has been dominant on both ends of the court against both. He completely ate alive Hunter Dickinson.
Oh, man.
That was he only had 5 rebounds, but man, he was so good using the dribble to get himself positioned, to get Dickinson on his hip. And then he showed that he's as strong or stronger than Dickinson. Mm-hmm. And then on the other end, I love the way he bodied him defensively. He forced Dickinson to miss a lot of shots before the shot was even attempted. Mm-hmm. So I thought he was a brilliant player on Wednesday night, and he's playing at a very high level. So I love what they've done these last few games. I love the chip that they had in MSG. I love the chip that they had at the Jumpman Invitational. I just think that, this club is sort of, it's like springtime for them. They're blossoming. They're blooming into the 2023 version. And I think because of that, the last year version, I think the cord may have been snipped last night when Leakey had that denial play late in the game that ended with Armando getting the layup for a 71-66 lead. I think that was Leakey just going, the last strand that's been snipped. We are who we are, and we're going to get a lot better at this. So that's the long response to Ohio State, to Michigan, and kind of where I think they are right now. We can get into some nitty gritty, but I think it's been fascinating as hell to watch a team go from what on earth is this to, okay, I can see them trimming that stuff first night in April, first Monday night in April. I can absolutely see it.
No, there's no doubt about it. I think I want to hone in on Armando for a little bit, because I think Carolina's improved play, even going back to the Georgia Tech game, really the 4 straight wins that they've rattled off in the last couple of weeks, has directly coincided with Carolina playing better. Because you remember this, you were at the game, so I know you remember this, but I remember watching it on TV. They went straight to Armando, I think, on the first possession. I don't remember if he scored or not, but he was very successful early on against Georgia Tech, and obviously had a good game and just had really 4 consecutive good games. And that, to me, in some ways was kind of the turning point, because I saw the point of, okay, this is a team that's been settling for poor jump shots kind of throughout this 4-game losing streak. It's a team that's not really trying to get the ball down low. Armando's been kind of banged up, which has not helped with that as well. Armando wasn't playing his best basketball because he was nursing the injury, and just kind of like the rest of the team, just really wasn't playing very good during the stretch. But that, to me, was okay. The emphasis is back down low, and I think we've really seen the fruits of that in the last couple games, obviously out-rebounding both Ohio State and Michigan over the wins, and Armando's been integral to that. And I've tweeted it out a few times. I tweeted early in the year that I said RJ Davis is the most important player on this team for me, and while I still think he's incredibly important, the last couple of weeks have showed me it's not necessarily him, it's Armando Bacot, because when Carolina plays inside out, and when Armando Bacot dominates and plays as well as he did against Michigan and against Hunter Dickinson, I mean, he put on a clinic last night against him. It was a one-on-one clinic of how to play somebody in the post 1v1 and get every single basket that you want, because that's exactly what Armando did for a huge stretch in that game. He was absolutely fantastic. But when Carolina plays inside out, like I said, they're just such a better team, because not only is Armando such a good player, but when he's playing as well as he is, and when the emphasis is getting him the ball, that causes the defense to collapse down low, and it gives Carolina more open shots on the outsides, and gives not only him but other players the chance to make plays. And that happened numerous times in the Michigan game as well. I remember Jay Billis hitting on it a few times during that game, but just how much it was forcing Michigan's defense to have to go defend him with multiple guys. And when Carolina has so much talent at the guard position, now you got guys like RJ and Caleb who are getting more open shots, and the ball is going to go in the basket when that happens. So what are your thoughts on Armando Bacot's play in recent weeks, and particularly the last couple of games? Because like I said, I just think he's been so good at times, and has just absolutely dominated some really big teams and some really physical teams as well.
Yeah, to stay on your point about how teams are a little bit different defending them, it's not just the threes that it opens up, but I think the drives. How many more drives are getting to the rim now by RJ and Caleb than beforehand? It's because he's able to drag some people out, because he's not necessarily hitting 15-footers, but his offensive moves are starting from 15 feet a lot. Mm-hmm. I asked him last night about the use of the dribble. He doesn't waste the dribbles as much as he used to. because he gets into a move and he gets his back into the defender, and that's his way of getting the defender on his hip. So he has to be honored and respected out there enough that those driving lanes are there. It's not as cluttered on the perimeter. We're not seeing at the high volume of balls. I'm not anti-ball screen at all, but I think because you got to run everything through him. You can get some ball screens later in the possession, but I don't really want to see them right away. I want to see them go through him or try to look to go through him every time down the floor. And one of the reasons why they've been able to do that is because there was an emphasis put on the bigs beating defenders down the floor, getting to your spot. Maybe not necessarily for a quick entry and score, but that secondary element of it. The secondary break isn't just a guy shooting a jump shot after the initial fast break didn't pan out. A lot of it is just getting a big posted, getting him in great position and score and getting the ball pretty quickly in the offense. So he's done a lot of that stuff. But I really like your point about RJ. You said it a couple of weeks ago, and I agree with you. I think RJ and or Caleb need to play well for this team to win every time they take the floor. But I also believe this is Armando's team. And I think that was hammered home last night. This is his team. He's the spokesman of the team. He's the engine of the team. He doesn't have to go 26 and whatever in order for them to beat really good teams. If he's 12 and 14, they can win a national championship on a night like that. But it's everything else he brings. He's such a smart guy. He's such a perceptive person. Aside from basketball, he's very smart, very perceptive, very articulate, very passionate. There's no BS with Armando. And one of the things I've loved so much about getting locker room access again this year is you can have those conversations right there. You can get more of the unfiltered, non-BS Armando. And I would, if I'm a Carolina fan, I would listen to what he says because they've got several guys who are great voices. I've been pitching Caleb's voice for a while because I've thought it was very important that his voice catch up to Armando's and RJ's and Leakey's. And Pete's is kind of sliding in where it needs to be as well. But Armando is it. It's his team. He's the guy who's got the best chance of having a jersey hanging in the rafters. Hell, if he keeps this up, there may not be anybody that wears number 5 ever again at this point.
I know, it's true, yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that's going there, and I really think he recognizes a responsibility in that respect. He totally gets the history of this program. He totally gets the broader meaning of putting a banner up and having a place in this program's history. A lot of guys have won a lot of games. But only 6 teams have put up banners. And I'm not going to go 24 with the Helms, but in the tournament, only 6. I say only 6 because they've had so many great teams, so many great players. This club has a great chance at being the 7th, and he would be the face and voice of the program and the engine of the team in doing that. So I think it's really important to him. And it goes back to them being humbled. Everybody in the program was humbled. They were embarrassed. Caleb was embarrassed by some of the decisions he was making, some of his play. They were embarrassed 9 days going from number 1 in the country to being out of the poll. And then they get a good win last week. They win 3 in a row. They're still not in the poll. It'll be interesting. They don't play again until the next ranking comes out. I think at 9-4, given the way they played the last couple of games, they'll probably sneak into the rankings.
I would think so, yeah.
But it's going to take them a while before they get back into the top 10. And I think that's a good thing. We've seen some chippiness from this club, chippiness that they didn't have in Portland. And I think that's all positive. And I think a lot of it comes from Armando. Armando loves bully ball, and he ain't gonna let anybody bully his team. You saw last night when Hunter Dickinson was pulling that crap with Caleb, 2 things. One, St. Louis Caleb got up and said, nah.
Yeah. Yes, that's what you like to see too. Yeah.
But I saw from where I was sitting, Armando running in there. It's like an offensive tackle protecting his quarterback who gets hit and someone's giving the business and he gets in there and says, no, you're not doing that. That's what Armando was like when he came in and pushed McDaniel and was just going to kind of either restore order or continue mucking things up, because I actually think that this group has shown us the last couple of games they have the ability to muck it up some, which is an unbelievably important attribute for these guys. And we've seen it come out. And I think Armando is the number 1 reason. I do think the other guys are huge. We can get into all that. But this is Armando's team. Armando is the guy that has so much personally at stake. And he's a guy that's playing for legacy. They were wearing Carolina legacy shirts during warmups last night. Mm-hmm. A lot of them were. Armando's a guy that can leave with a legacy that when 15 years from now in the Dean Dome, when he says, "Hi, I'm Armando Bacot and I'm a Tar Heel," he gets a huge ovation. Mm. Like Tyler still gets. He's not going to be Tyler. Tyler's the best player in program history as a collegian. But Armando could really kind of carve out a little space for himself in the rafters and in the museum. And I think that that's part of the drive there. I really do.
Yeah, and credit to Armando, not to stay on him too long, but I mean, AJ, we've talked about it so many times, man. But I mean, you remember his freshman season. You were there for every game. I was on the road with you at times and at every single home game. And just seeing, voice from Armando Bacot, hearing voices in his head was something he told us to where he is now, not only on the basketball court, but like you said, as an individual, as a human being, as a person, how much he's matured and how much he's kind of grown into not only accepting the role of what he is at North Carolina, but accepting and excelling in the pressures that come along with that. Because, guys, it's just so much pressure being the guy at North Carolina like he is. And I don't necessarily think Armando Bacot feels that pressure. And that's a major credit to him because, as I said, he felt it during his freshman year. He was having issues, and that's what you expect. But he's grown, he's grown, he's grown. He's proved just to be just such a dominant big when he's at the top of his game, man. He's been a joy to watch over the past couple of weeks.
Well, and staying on that, I think it's a really good point, Jacob. And I think that even we're watching him, scale the mountain right before our eyes as far as continuing to mature, because I think he, along with the rest of the guys, were sort of trying to play to that number one ranking. They were playing to that. They were playing to the championship or bust mindset. And what were we saying in November? You can't win a championship in November.
No.
And Caleb said a couple of weeks ago, he repeated it over and over, and I don't believe it was just player speak. He said, "Look, this is good for us. We're going to gain from this." And I think everybody did. And one of the things that being not so emphatically off that perch did for these guys is, man, they don't have a number to play for. They got to play for themselves. They got to play for their own personal today achievements, tomorrow achievements, collectively and individually. And it sort of was that one final harsh reminder that unless you play as one of five, it doesn't matter. Because as many shots as Caleb wanted to take when they're losing, doesn't do him any good. Doesn't do him any good. 34 points on 36 shots against Alabama. That 34 looks pretty good, but that didn't do him any good. The way Caleb played last night does him a lot more good for the next level than if he's taking 24 shots and scoring 24 points. That's just the way things are with him. That's the way things are with the league. Same thing with RJ. I just think that forced them to play for who they are, and they had a decision to make. You guys got 4 more months of basketball left. What you going to do with it? What are you going to do to make all the statements and all the hype come to fruition, not to satisfy that stuff, but to satisfy your own? That's why it was so important when those kids said championship or bust. Those are their words. So it made it easier for us in the media to judge them accordingly. I told you from day one when you came to work at THI, I judge teams based on what their stated missions are in accordance with what their potential is. And this club's stated mission was championship or bust, and that is absolutely what their potential is. So they were being judged very harshly. And I think it took that tree shaking in order for them to kind of settle into the true launching of the 2023 season. It didn't occur November 7th or November 9th, whenever the season, I think it was the 7th, whenever the season began. I think it occurred 2 weeks ago. And they were sort of coming out like a bear coming out of hibernation. And I think this past week with Ohio State and Michigan, I think that was seeing the sunshine. Leakey's denial. That was the last little step to the court. I think the cord stuff, the March run, all that junk, I think it's gone. And they got rid of it pretty quickly because I thought it was an albatross when they were in Portland and when they were in Bloomington and when they were in Blacksburg to a degree. And I said something to Leakey about it the other day in New York, and he agreed. Yeah, it was an albatross. Now it's gone. And it's gone because of Armando. It's gone because of Caleb. It's gone because of RJ. Watching them play last night, Jacob, and also Saturday, I felt like it was Philadelphia last year, the UCLA game. And yet, if that's their new starting point, they could get a lot better than that. Think about what they were a year ago. And now you start to think about how tantalizing it is to what they can be in a few months from now. When Pete's still figuring things out, Hubert's still kind of figuring out some of the bench stuff. He knows what Trimble can give him. Okay, what could Puff give him? There are nights where Puff might be able to give him 16 minutes. There are nights where Puff will only have to give him 7 or 8 minutes. Where does Tyler Nickel consistently fit into this? Jalen Washington came in and banged some last night.
Yeah.
Played a minute 41 or something like that. That's a real valuable minute 41 for himself, for his own personal growth. Where does he fit in? They get done back here in a week or so. Where does he fit in? So I think this club is going to continue to evolve because there are parts that have to be woven in to the core. And the core is cool with them being woven in. Last year, it wasn't possible. There was a shell around the Iron Five. Right now, the Iron Five, they're really open to the other guys having significant parts moving forward. So this club's going to get better. And Hubert's pushing a lot of the right buttons. I think the trust factor that Hubert talked about a couple of weeks ago, I think it's 100% there. You can see it when Caleb passes up an open shot for an even better shot to Leakey. The trust is there. It's not something Hubert has to coach into them right now because they have completely gone in that direction. Now they have to maintain it. But I think this group will. They had their bad stuff early. And the humbling is, being humble is can often be one of the best things that happen to people.
Yeah.
And I really believe that when people talk about redemption for last year, I think this club's going to be getting redemption on themselves for this year, on how things started and how that mindset just wasn't right. And they're going to battle against that the rest of the way and be really, really good and much better off for it.
Yeah, no doubt. And I completely agree with everything you said. I tweeted it last night, but I thought we saw Carolina. I said basically there's still levels this team can go, which is what you're saying. There's still levels this team can go up. There's no doubt about it. But what they did last night that really impressed me is one is they banged. They matched that physicality and they stepped up to the occasion instead of maybe at times earlier this season during that loss where they maybe would have backed away a little bit and kind of came into a little shell. No, they said, and they did it against Ohio State in a lot of ways too, particularly in that second half. Hey, no, we're going to bang with you. We're going to play physical. You want to play physical? We'll play physical. That's fine. Not only that, but they made plays down the stretch because it was a bit of a weird game, AJ, where like I was talking to somebody about this morning where, you kind of, I always felt like Carolina was in control, but you would look at the scoreboard and Michigan would be behind by 2, 3, 4. It would always be like this close game, but for me, it always felt like Carolina was going to win the game. They just felt like they, to me, were the better team, the more physical team, and the team that was just going to make plays down the stretch when it mattered, and they ended up doing that. So to me, that's really big positives. Like you said, I think again, there's levels this team can still go up, but they proved last night that they can step up to a challenge. Not only that, but they can make plays and hit shots down the stretch when it really matters. And that's the sign of a team improving. That's the sign of a team evolving. And that's a sign of a team that we know can be really good, starting to maybe believe and figure it out, get over that mental block and mental hurdle they had to deal with a couple weeks ago. And like you said, that could be the best thing that happens to this team this year. It really could be. That could be the thing that spurns this team on and says, we're not going to that point again. We know we can be good. We've proven we can be good. But our mindset has to be right in order to be good and in order to win games.
That's sort of that redemption mindset I was talking about a minute ago. You're right about last night. Yeah, I remember saying to Brandon B, I was like, we have 6.
I know. It was such a weird game in that respect.
But I think it seemed like that because so much of what the Tar Heels did in scoring was so pretty.
Yeah.
There was some flash to what they were doing. There was some next level looking stuff. There were some plays that Caleb had. That reverse one-handed layup was next level stuff. So when they did do good things, it was at an exceptionally high level. And you're like, wow, there were a lot of not a lot of big wow moments, but a lot of little mini wow moments. And then you'd have Leaky with the block and the ball save and things like that. You're like, man, and they showed that gusto in the game too, which adds to the wow factor. So those are all good signs. That just shows a lot of stuff's coming together. Mm-hmm. And the grittiness too that you mentioned, I think that's absolutely true as well. I said on Saturday at Madison Square Garden, they actually put a coat of armor on. I thought they added another coat last night. Maybe not as thick.
Yeah.
Because it was more a basketball coat Saturday. Last night, it was more of a rough around the edges, don't screw with us coat, which is good. Mm-hmm. I think that's healthy. I think that everybody that they're going to play saw that, has seen them. You know what? Maybe they aren't that soft. Maybe you shouldn't expect to win a lunch pail battle with these guys because they do have some of that in them. And they brought that out. So I think it's really cool as a guy who covers a team to see such a wild swing. But the wild swing is mainly a club just sort of learning from itself and having that opportunity to kind of have people point at them and say negative things. And so what you going to do about it?
Yeah.
You're being highly criticized because everything you said in September and October, and you've done nothing to come remotely close to backing it up through 9 games. So what you going to do about it? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great thing. I think it's fun. It's fun to cover. That was a fun game last night to cover. That was a fun game at MSG to cover. The atmospheres were great. But you could sense by the way Carolina fans were responding to those wow moments that they're seeing it too. Mm-hmm. They're seeing that club that everybody thought that would be there from day one. Just like it's like a football team when they run, high school football team runs out on the field, they break through the sign that the cheerleaders are holding. Like this team broke through a sign, and the sign said 2023. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're here. Mm-hmm. Now what are we going to be? They got a lot of improvement to do, but I think they're here now in 2023, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no doubt. Those games would have been a lot funner too if the Wi-Fi worked in both those places, right?
Well, yeah. I used Ethernet last night. What happened last night?
Oh, they had Ethernet last night. Okay, well that's
I had it. Yeah, it worked for me. It wasn't working for RL Bonham, but it was working
there's always somebody, right?
But I got mine in the end because my Word got.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. I know you had Wi-Fi because I know at MSG it basically didn't work.
I had to log into the Wi-Fi at MSG from tip-off to the end of the game 49 times.
I'm disappointed, man. The Mecca can't even have good Wi-Fi. I mean, what are we doing here?
Sucks. Come on, guys. It's the Mecca because of where it's located. It's not the Mecca because it's pristine in any kind of way. So, I'm not clamoring to get back to MSG. I can tell you that.
I could see it, especially from an in and out kind of perspective, just getting there and trying to get on a plane afterwards. But you get there and the Wi-Fi doesn't even work. So how are you supposed to?
I flew up in the morning and flew back that night, which was a mistake because I didn't have all my work done. So I didn't post my column till like 2:00 in the morning after I'd gotten home to Raleigh.
Jesus.
So that was a grind. Yesterday was a grind too because we had football signing day.
Yeah.
Had all that stuff, and kudos, shout out to Dina King for being awesome in the morning, so I could have somewhat, I say somewhat very loosely, normal day.
Yeah,
we had the presser. I had to file that stuff, and then I raced to Charlotte. I hate racing the games because I usually get there like 2 hours before kickoff or tip off, and I just feel like I'm always kind of playing from behind when I get there an hour before tip off or something. So Dina came up big and Brandon came up big at the game. So it all worked out. But man, sometimes we have these grinds that if you see a few typos in my pieces, you can sort of have a little insight to why, because the grind sometimes takes a toll.
Yeah, especially during the overlap, man. It's just tough, but we're not far away from that being over. It's 6-7 days now. You'll be done with that overlap.
Yeah, by the time the Tar Heels take the court again, football will formally be over.
That's a good point.
So, and they have a noon game, and I think I arrive in Pittsburgh at 11, coming from San Diego the night before. So bang, bang, bang in the Steel City.
Yeah, man. It'll be a wild 20, probably more like 48 hours for that one. But what do we know you'll pull through, AJ? It's not your first rodeo. We'll pull it that way. Real quickly, I want to go ahead and give a shout out to our sponsor on this podcast. I want to ask you one more thing, but then we'll talk about the Pitt game and wrap it up after that. But you guys know we love him. We've been sponsoring all our UNC basketball shows so far and have sponsored countless other podcasts. That's the Rogue Shop. Check them out, rogueshop.com, specializing in top shelf family grown hemp derived products. So whether it's CBD, Delta 8, Delta 9, there's more I know I'm not even listing right now. They've got it all covered. Whatever form you like it, tinctures, oils, gummies, candies, creams. CBD cream's fantastic. And a lot of the stuff they have is incredibly tasty too, which is awesome as well. So guys, it's really, really high quality products. And when they say family grown, top shelf stuff, they really mean it too. If you've ever ordered from them, you know exactly why. And it doesn't take but a second after you get that package to realize, oh yeah, this stuff really is the real deal. So check them out. Tar Heels 10 promo code to save. Again, that's Tar Heels 10. Make sure you use that promo code to save on your next order. You can check them out. Links in the description below. RogueShop.com. AJ, before we look ahead to Pitt, I want to ask you about Caleb Love too, because you wrote about this in your 5 takeaways last night, and I've noticed some positive things in his game throughout the stretch as well. And I know in your column you kind of talked about we're kind of seeing more facets of Love's game kind of shine through. I tweeted it out. I think it was last night, but in the Ohio State game I noticed it as well. One thing that's kind of jumped out with me is he's always been a pretty good passer, but I think it's even shown in recent weeks a little bit more. You talked about the lane opening up more because Armando's dominating so much down there. It's so evident with him because not only is Caleb getting to the rack more and hitting more of those mid-range jumpers, he's getting to the rack and dishing it to Armando. There's been so many times where he's done that or kicked it outside to an open shooter, and I think that's been a really big positive as well. Just to read a stat to you, you put this in your 5 takeaways last night. 18 points last night, still 1 for 5 from 3, so he's not shooting from that high clip from outside the arc yet, but 5 from 8 from inside the arc. I believe he had a handful of rebounds and assists too. So had some turnovers in there. You're always going to kind of expect that with Caleb Love. That's just kind of who he is because of how he plays. You'd love for him to cut down on that. But talk to me about some of the evolution maybe of Caleb Love's game and just more of the all-around better play we've seen from him. He's proven to be a guy now that doesn't have to just be hitting threes all the time to have a good game. He's affecting the game and helping his team in different ways right now.
He can become a volume scorer by scoring only inside the arc because of his driving, the floater, and the floater is 10, 12 feet now sometimes.
I know.
Or he can get right
Impressive.
to the rim.
It's a hard shot too, man.
Lane, see, what he's done is when he gets in the lane, the defender can't predict what he's going to do because it's unpredictable. Because he's capable. As soon as he gets in the lane, he's capable of scoring. RJ's got a better pull-up jumper, especially when he comes in a little bit off the elbow. He can stop and hit that pull-up jumper like he did a couple times last night. Caleb is more the floater guy. He'll get a little bit further in the lane and shoot the floater or get right to the rim. But that's why he has to be guarded so much, because he's really good at those things. And what I love about him in the lane now is he's using his body really well. I've talked to him, maybe it was after the Citadel or something, where I talked about you're getting stuff off. I mean, remember when he used to drive that he'd leave his feet and he was sure to hit the ground and ball would go up the other way because it wouldn't even get toward the rim. Everything's getting to the rim now. And what isn't getting to the rim are being passed. Those are passes. His awareness when he gets in the lane is so good. His ability to use his body, he's got a strong body. His ability to use his body when he gets in the lane is so good. And what he's doing is he's showing that there's a wholeness, a fullness to his game. He wants to be a high-volume three-point shooter. All guards do. And he's worked really hard on it. Really, really hard on it. And I know that he's been bothered by not shooting well from the perimeter. He's only shooting 27% from the perimeter in the win streak. And he's at like 27% for the season or something like that. But you never know it. You walk in that locker room and you talk to Caleb Love. Now, a few weeks ago, absolutely.
Yeah.
He acknowledged, like at Virginia Tech, he acknowledged to be really, really frustrated. Really frustrated. Indiana, really, really frustrated. And I talked to him about it each time. But I hadn't asked him about the last couple of games because they're winning. That's really important to him. Some people say that that's not. That's foolish. It's an ignorant thing to say.
Yeah, it's stupid.
And he's showing a whole game. I think he's clearly showing elements of being an NBA player, because you don't want to just be a one-trick pony. You have to, unless you're going to be a star, an all-star type guy. Hubert will tell you have to be damn good at one thing. But I think Caleb is got a lot of stuff in his bag, as he likes
Mhm.
to call it. The downhill stuff and the awareness. And like you said, passing the ball. I think he's got 22 assists in the 4-game win streak.
Yeah. He's
So
been good. Yeah.
I know he had 4 or 5 turnovers last night, but honestly, only one of them was really, really bad. The other ones you don't mind. He's
Mhm.
trying to create. They're trying to get those wow moments, and I'm not saying they're trying to play with pizzazz, but their natural tendency is to go toward that because they're so good. They could do the kind of things where one basket seems like more. And against a lot of teams, it can be demoralizing. It wasn't in Michigan last night because Wolverines are pretty good. They played their best game or near their best game last night. I guess their best game was when they were out at Pitt. But I think that what we're seeing from Caleb is just a mature game, a higher IQ game, and a guy that absolutely wants to win. When he was out of the game last night, there was a call. It was a blocking foul called on maybe Puff on a drive. And the first guy off the bench complaining and yelling was Caleb. And I've noted before, that's one of the great things, one of the benefits about being at the games. I've noted before how Caleb's demeanor, and I've talked him up a lot because I really believe he's a doubting guy. He's a team guy. He's got all above those kind of boxes you want to check. He's misunderstood by a lot of people, maybe because of body language and that kind of thing, and because sometimes he takes terrible shots. But he'll tell you, and Hubert will too, you got to live with those terrible shots. It's part of who he is. It's part of that Caleb mojo. It's when you get a big home run hitter, you're going to get a lot of strikeouts, and the guys get hit into a lot of double plays. But, man, you get that 3-run homer in a 3-3 game in the 7th, you want that. Those are the guys that make $40 million a year. So Caleb's the kind of player that he may bounce into a double play. He may strike out with a couple runners on. But, man, in the 7th inning, he hits that 3-run homer. And there's so much value to that, especially being a veteran guy on a team that is totally dialed in to do what they said all along they should do.
He makes plays that you pay to watch. That's why people pay to go watch sports. It's because he's capable of making plays like that.
Reverse one-handed layup. I mean,
shot against Duke last year. He makes plays like that when it matters. And again, that's what those are the type of players when they're on that really make you kind of fall in love with the sport. And it can be
RJ too. That floater that RJ hit off the glass with a minute and a half left.
Huge.
He gets off stuff that's wow. People say, well, he's too small to play in the NBA. Look at the stuff he's getting off. He's mastering that. So he has a great chance to play in the league because he could get off shots when moving, and he can get off a variety of shots when moving. Some other guys that maybe had really good college careers didn't have that little extra level ability for those kind of things. So RJ's got that, and he and Caleb are playing off each other really, really well right now. They've got great chemistry out there right now. Great chemistry and great synergy.
Yeah, they've been really good, and like we talked about, I think Armando's improved play has really helped their games out as well. So, AJ, before we wrapping up, let's talk about Pitt. Obviously, I mentioned it earlier, December 30th, next game for the Tar Heels, noon tip-off in Pittsburgh. I mean, Pitt's playing well right now, 9-4 overall, 2-0 in ACC, won 8 of their last 9 games, including a couple nights ago, a win at Syracuse. They're 2-0, like I said, in ACC with another win at NC State a few weeks back. Non-conference schedule, isn't the most impressive. I think that the only really top team that they played during the non-conference slate was Vanderbilt, and they ended up losing that game at Vanderbilt. So I think it's a Pitt game that's playing better and it is better right now than some would have expected. And I think, maybe you're looking at it before the season starts and kind of penciling it as a win, but it should be a win for the Tar Heels, but I think it's going to be more of a challenge than some would have expected. And if Carolina reverts to old ways, which I don't think is going to happen, and doesn't show up for a game, this is a game they can 100% lose, and I think it's one they definitely need to be ready for. So what are your thoughts on the matchup with Pitt? I know it's still about 8 days out, but we can hit on it for a second.
Well, I think Pitt, I watched a lot of their game at Northwestern when they won that game. They looked really good. They lost to Michigan. They got blown out by Michigan on a neutral site. It was in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I believe so.
Ago.
That was their game of the year. Yeah, they started 1-3 and the losses to West Virginia, Michigan, and VCU. So they have some losses in there, but have played better in recent weeks.
Well, they won 8 or 9.
Yeah,
and they're doing it defending. They're one of the best teams in the country defending the three. I think opponents are shooting around 29, maybe a little under 29% from 3-point range against them. They're rebounding well. Like they're +7 per game in rebounding, which will put them in the top 25, I believe. So they have a better number there than Carolina does, although Carolina's played better competition. They've got some really good players that are have really come into their own. They have a guy named Blake Hinson who started out at Ole Miss. He's a solid player at Ole Miss, but he's finding himself. You know how Alonnis Williams found himself at Wake last year, and it looks like Appleby this year has found himself at Wake. Hinson's kind of found himself at Pitt, and at 6'7", he presents some matchup issues. I think that Leakey will get the assignment, but he's a guy that can shoot from the perimeter. He's a guy that can take you down low and post up and score. Jamarius Burton is a kid that's playing pretty well. I think he's around 14 points a game. And, of course, they have Hughley, who really kind of manned up on the heels last year in Chapel Hill. I'm curious. I'm not a big believer in the revenge factor, especially from one season to the next. But those guys were embarrassed by what happened at home last year. So they might get a little extra spark going in. But this is going to be a battle. It's going to be another bully ball game. This is a club that defends, and they go after the glass. And Carolina's going to have to match that, especially on the road. Now, it helps Carolina that the students won't be there. So the Oakland Zoo won't be all that full, and really hadn't been very full the last few times I've been up there. So that may not be a huge factor, but I still think that Pitt's good enough to beat this team. They're big enough, thick enough to cause some issues, maybe get Armando in foul trouble. And I think it would be a good win for the Tar Heels. When you look at their schedule, they got this, and they got, Wake at home after that, and then
I believe so,
home. And they should be 12-4 when they go to Charlottesville. 12-4 in a 7-game win streak, and this club could go into Charlottesville and win right now. I think right now, I know that Miami's 12-1 and just had a nice win the other night over UVA, even though they tried to give that game away. But would you pick against Carolina to win the ACC right now? I wouldn't.
No, not with how they're playing and, finding ways to win, too. It's Wake Forest and then Notre Dame after that, and they got that trip to Charlottesville, too. So, that's when it really gets – that's going to be a really –
And they'll be tested. Jacob, they'll be tested coming off. The players are home now.
Yeah, the 8-game – I know 8 days off should be a positive, but there won't – obviously, there'll be some days for Christmas in there they're not practicing, but that should be a positive, too.
Yeah, well, they're home. Yeah. They're home right now, and they come back the 26th, evening of the 26th. So they're not going to practice for several days. They're going to eat. They're going to lounge. They're going to think, we're pretty good against Ohio State and Michigan. So the stuff that afflicted them earlier, it'll be interesting to see if it comes back and haunts them now. Yeah. I don't think it will. I think that these guys fully are on board with what the mission statement is and understanding it's more than just a statement. It's actually an act. It's an action. And that's been the transformation here in the last couple of weeks. But they come back to 26. They practice tonight at 26. They practice 27th, 28th, fly to Pittsburgh on the 29th, and then play at noon on 30th. So they'll have a few days before that. So we'll see if all this stuff carries over. There's a big gap in between these two games, not just in time, but with what they're all going to do personally. And then they come back. So if they show up ready to go and they look like they did the last 2 games at Pittsburgh, I think that'll be a tremendous sign moving forward for this team.
Agreed. We'll see what happens in Pittsburgh. And AJ mentioned earlier he'll be in San Diego here shortly for the football game, and then he'll obviously be in Pittsburgh for the game for the Tar Heels as well. So a lot of stuff going on over here at TarHeelIllustrated.com. So make sure you keep it locked to TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're not a subscriber as well, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. We put out a ton of content this time of year. And, like AJ said, grind really hard for you guys. So definitely hit the thumbs up, hit that subscribe button as well. And let's see how many likes we can run up on this video. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones for another episode. I believe it's episode 5 of the UNC Basketball Show. So coming at you thick and fast. We're going to record a UNC football show over the next couple of days as well. So be looking out for that one. A lot of news on the football side, transfers, signing day, obviously, coaching hires. You finally got to talk to the new coaching hires as well. So a lot of insight will be going into that one. So stay tuned to our YouTube channel for that one. If you hit the notification bell, you'll know exactly when it comes out. We appreciate you watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks.